1980, archaeologists working near Naples made a discovery that would rewrite what we thought we knew about ancient Rome. Behind a stone archway, in what had been the beach of an ancient city, they found something that shouldn't exist. 300 skeletons, huddled together in boat sheds, frozen in their final moments. Men, women, children, entire families clutching their jewelry, their coins, their most precious possessions. And among them, something even more extraordinary. A Roman soldier, still wearing his sword, who had stayed behind to help. These weren't just bodies. They were time capsules from August 24th, 79 AD, the day Mount Vesuvius erupted and buried 2 cities in volcanic fury. Everyone knows about Pompeii, but almost no one knows about Herculaneum. And here's the thing, Herculaneum was preserved better, much better. This is the story of the city that time forgot and what it taught us about who the Romans really were. Before we talk about the disaster, we need to understand what was lost. Herculaneum wasn't just any Roman town. It was the Beverly Hills of the ancient world, a small, wealthy seaside resort perched on a cliff overlooking the Bay of Naples. While Pompeii bustled with commerce and crowds, Herculaneum was exclusive, elegant, designed for the Roman elite who wanted to escape the chaos of the capital. The town was home to perhaps 4,000 to 5,000 people. Its streets were narrower than Pompeii's, its houses grander. Multi-story villas with private balconies overlooked the Mediterranean. Indoor plumbing was standard. Marble everywhere. Frescoes decorated nearly every wall. Vivid reds, brilliant blues, scenes of mythology and daily life painted with such skill that they look fresh even today. The wealthiest Romans built massive estates here. The Villa of the Papyri, named for what archaeologists would later find inside, sprawled across multiple levels with gardens, fountains, bronze sculptures, and a library that would become legendary. Marcus Nonius Balbus, a Roman senator and patron of the city, had funded public buildings, baths, and temples. His marble statues stood in the forum, a reminder of who kept Herculaneum beautiful. But it wasn't just the rich. Herculaneum had fishermen, shopkeepers, bakers, craftsmen. Life moved at a slower pace than in Pompeii. The town felt more like a community. Neighbors knew each other. Children played in the streets. Slaves and freedmen worked in the shops and villas, part of the intricate social fabric that held Roman society together. The Bay of Naples was paradise in 79. Wealthy Romans called it the most beautiful place in the world. The poet Martial wrote about its gardens and its sunsets. The historian Strabo praised its perfect climate, but underneath this paradise, something was stirring. Mount Vesuvius loomed over the bay, a massive mountain that locals considered sacred. Temples dotted its slopes. Vineyards thrived in its rich volcanic soil. The Romans had no word for volcano. They didn't know what Vesuvius was. To them, it was just a mountain, a particularly fertile one. They had no idea it was a bomb with a 1,700-year fuse that was about to run out. August 24th, 79 AD started like any other day in Herculaneum, but 17 miles to the south, in the coastal town of Misenum, a 17-year-old named Pliny the Younger was about to witness something no one had ever seen before and survived to write about it. His account would become the only eyewitness description we have of what happened next. Around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Vesuvius exploded. The mountain didn't just erupt, it detonated with the force of 100,000 atomic bombs. The top of Vesuvius tore itself apart, launching a column of superheated gas, ash, and rock 12 miles into the sky. The eruption column was so massive, so impossibly tall, that it could be seen from over 60 miles away. Pliny the Younger described it as looking like a Mediterranean pine tree, a massive trunk of ash rising straight up, then spreading out at the top like branches. Modern volcanologists call this a Plinian eruption in his honor. It's the most violent type of volcanic event on Earth. In Herculaneum, people looked up and saw the sky turning black. At first, they didn't panic. Vesuvius was throwing out pumice, lightweight volcanic rock that rained down like hail. In Pompeii, just 6 miles from the crater, pumice buried the streets 3 feet deep within hours. But Herculaneum was 9 miles away, upwind of the initial eruption. The pumice mostly missed them. Many residents thought they were safe. Some even watched the eruption from their homes, fascinated by the spectacle. Archaeological evidence suggests that during the first 12 hours of the eruption, most of Herculaneum's population stayed put, waiting for the danger to pass. They were making a fatal mistake, because while Pompeii was being buried in pumice, Vesuvius was building towards something far worse. Inside the eruption column, millions of tons of rock and ash were climbing higher and higher into the atmosphere, and eventually all that weight became too much for the column to support. Around midnight, the eruption column collapsed. When billions of tons of superheated material fall from the sky all at once, they create something called a pyroclastic surge, a ground-hugging avalanche of gas and debris that moves at speeds up to 400 miles per hour. The temperature inside these surges can exceed 700 degrees Celsius. Nothing survives contact with a pyroclastic surge. The first surge rushed down Vesuvius's western slope around 1 in the morning on August 25th. It hit Herculaneum like a hammer. People who'd been sleeping in their beds were killed instantly. The surge was so hot that it vaporized flesh and boiled brains inside skulls before victims could even react. But the surge was also strange. It wasn't purely destructive like the ones that would later hit Pompeii. The first surge that struck Herculaneum was what volcanologists call a dilute surge. Still deadly, but not powerful enough to completely demolish buildings. It flowed through the streets like a river of heat, killing everyone in its path, but leaving structures mostly intact. Then came the second surge, and the third, and the fourth. Over the next several hours, at least 6 pyroclastic surges rolled through Herculaneum, each one carrying more debris than the last. The later surges weren't just hot gas. They were dense flows of mud, ash, and volcanic material that began to bury the entire city. By dawn on August 25th, Herculaneum was gone, buried under 60 feet of volcanic material that would harden into rock. For comparison, Pompeii was buried under 20 feet of ash and pumice. Herculaneum was entombed 3 times deeper, in material that wasn't soft ash, but volcanic mud that baked into stone harder than concrete. The city wasn't just buried. It was sealed perfectly. For 16 centuries, Herculaneum disappeared, unlike Pompeii, which remained partially visible. Its ruins occasionally plundered for building materials. Herculaneum was completely forgotten. The volcanic rock that buried it was so hard that nothing could penetrate it. A new town, Resina, was eventually built directly on top of the ancient city. The people living there had no idea that 60 feet beneath their homes lay a perfectly preserved Roman town. Then, in 1709, a French soldier digging a well-struck marble. The soldier, working for an Austrian prince who'd bought land in Resina, had no idea what he'd found. But the marble was exquisite, clearly ancient, clearly valuable. Word spread. The prince began commissioning more digging. Tunnels were dug, statues were hauled up, bronze sculptures, columns, frescoes were cut from walls. They'd found the Villa of the Papyri. For decades, treasure hunters and early archaeologists burrowed through Herculaneum like moles, following tunnels in the dark, extracting whatever looked valuable. It was archaeology by theft. No documentation, no care for context, just grab whatever shines and haul it to the surface. But in 1750, something stopped them cold. In In one room of the Villa of the Papyri, workers found thousands of carbonized scrolls, ancient books burned black by Vesuvius's heat, but somehow still intact. This was the only library from the Roman world that had survived. The problem? The scrolls were so fragile that touching them made them crumble to dust. Early attempts to unroll them were disasters. Scholars tried everything, soaking them in chemicals, cutting them open, even just carefully peeling them apart by hand. Most scrolls were destroyed in the process. A few were successfully opened, revealing texts by the Greek philosopher Philodemus, works on music, on death, on the nature of the gods. But for every scroll saved, a dozen were lost. Eventually, the excavation stopped. The tunnels were abandoned. Herculaneum went back to sleep. It wasn't until the 20th century that systematic archaeology began. In 1927, Mussolini's government launched new excavations, this time from the surface. Slowly, carefully, archaeologists began peeling back the volcanic rock to reveal the ancient city below. What they found was astonishing. Pompeii is famous. It's spectacular. But Herculaneum is intimate because the volcanic material that buried Herculaneum was different. Wet, dense, oxygen-free. It preserved things that normally disintegrate. In Pompeii, you see stone. In Herculaneum, you see life. Wood survived. Entire wooden screens, beds, doors, shutters. Objects that haven't existed anywhere else in the Roman world for 2,000 years. In one shop, archaeologists found a wooden clothes press still standing. In another, a wooden partition with intricate lattice work still divides rooms. Food survived. Carbonized loaves of bread were found still sitting on bakery shelves. Eggs, figs, chickpeas. An entire meal was discovered on a table, abandoned mid-bite when the surges hit. Fish bones suggested what people had been eating for dinner. Fabrics survived. Fibers from tunics, blankets, and even a fisherman's net. You can see the weave patterns, understand how Roman clothes were actually constructed. But the most incredible preservation was yet to come. In the 1980s, archaeologists began excavating the ancient beach, or rather, what had been the beach. The pyroclastic surges had pushed the coastline out by nearly a quarter mile, burying the old shoreline under layers of hardened volcanic debris. At the beach, where the town met the sea, there had been a series of arched boat sheds built into the seawall. These vaulted chambers had been used to store fishing equipment and small boats. When the eruption began, it appears that hundreds of Herculaneum's residents fled to these boat sheds, hoping to escape by sea. They never made it. The first pyroclastic surge killed them instantly. The heat was so intense that it flash-boiled tissue and caused skulls to explode from internal pressure. But the volcanic material that buried them also preserved them with eerie precision. 300 skeletons were found in and around the boat sheds. Entire families frozen in their final moments. A woman clutching an infant. A man still wearing his money belt heavy with coins. A teenage girl with gold serpent bracelets on her arms. A soldier in his prime, sword at his side, who appeared to have been helping others evacuate. These weren't plaster casts like Pompeii's famous victims. These were actual bones, actual teeth, actual evidence of real human beings. Forensic analysis revealed their ages, their health, their last meals, even diseases they'd suffered from. One skeleton, a woman in her 40s, showed signs of having survived breast cancer. Another, a man, had severe lead poisoning, probably from drinking wine sweetened with lead. The bones told stories of hard labor, of good nutrition, of lives lived fully before being cut tragically short. The soldier's remains were particularly poignant. Analysis showed he was about 37 years old, well-fed, powerfully built. He carried a gladius, a standard military sword, and a carpentry tool belt, suggesting he might have been a military engineer. Why was he on the beach? Was he organizing the evacuation? Trying to save others? We'll never know. But his presence suggests that even in humanity's darkest moments, there are those who stay behind. For 2.5 centuries, the scrolls from the Villa of the Papyri sat in museums, unreadable, too fragile to open, too valuable to destroy. They represented the single greatest collection of ancient knowledge ever found, and we couldn't access it. Then technology caught up with history. In 2015, scientists began using something called X-ray phase contrast tomography, essentially a superpowered version of medical CT scans, to peer inside the scrolls without opening them. The technology could detect minute differences in density between the papyrus and the ancient ink, creating virtual unrollings of scrolls that hadn't been opened in 2,000 years. It worked. For the first time, scholars could read texts that had been locked away since the 1st century AD. What did they find? Philosophy, poetry, works by Epicurus and his followers, treatises on virtue, on pleasure, on how to live a good life. One scroll contained a work by Philodemus called On the Good King According to Homer, essentially a manual for ethical leadership based on the Iliad. These weren't just dusty academic texts, they were the books Romans read, the ideas they debated, the philosophy they lived by. And here's what's even more incredible. Archaeologists have only excavated about 30% of the Villa of the Papyri. The rest remains buried beneath the modern city of Herculaneum, the new name for Resina. Ground-penetrating radar suggests there could be thousands more scrolls down there, waiting in the dark. The villa wasn't just a house. It was an ancient think tank, a private academy, where philosophers gathered and debated under the patronage of one of Rome's wealthiest citizens. The scrolls represent the only intact library from the ancient world, and most of it is still underground. So why does Herculaneum matter? Because it showed us something Pompeii never could: the texture of Roman life. Pompeii gives us the big picture, a thriving commercial city frozen in time. But Herculaneum gives us the details. The wooden cradle that rocked a Roman baby to sleep, the rope still coiled on a dock, the graffiti scratched into a wall by a bored child, the lunch left on the table. These intimate artifacts humanize the Romans in ways that marble statues and grand monuments never could. They remind us that these weren't mythical figures from textbooks. They were people. They lived in houses. They ate meals. They loved their children. They argued with their neighbors. They worried about money. The skeletons on the beach drive this home with devastating clarity. For centuries, scholars believed that most of Herculaneum's population escaped before the eruption. The city seemed too empty, too free of bodies. The discovery of the boat sheds changed that narrative forever. People tried to flee. They made rational decisions based on the information they had. They grabbed their valuables, their family heirlooms, their life savings. They ran to the sea because that seemed safest. And they died anyway. It's a stark reminder that no matter how advanced a civilization becomes, nature is stronger. But Herculaneum also shows us resilience. The city is still there, still teaching us, still revealing secrets after 2,000 years. Every new excavation brings new discoveries. In 2021, a ceremonial chariot was found, almost perfectly preserved. In 2022, archaeologists discovered a room that appears to have been used for worshipping household gods, complete with offerings still on the altar. The Villa of the Papyri continues to tantalize researchers. Modern technology might finally let us read the thousands of scrolls still buried underground without ever digging them up. Imagine what we might learn about Roman philosophy, literature, science. Imagine finding lost works by Virgil, or Livy, or playwrights whose names we've forgotten. Herculaneum is the gift that keeps giving. On August 24, 79 AD, Mount Vesuvius destroyed 2 cities and killed thousands of people. For 2 millennia, we remembered Pompeii and forgot Herculaneum. But in forgetting Herculaneum, we missed the better story. Because Herculaneum isn't just about death and destruction. It's about preservation. It's about the stubborn refusal of human achievement to stay buried. It's about how sometimes the things we lose come back to us, changed, carbonized, turned to stone, but still recognizable, still valuable, still teaching us who we were and by extension, who we are. A soldier stayed behind to help. A family grabbed their most precious possessions and ran for the sea. A philosopher's library survived 2,000 years, waiting for technology that could read it. These aren't just artifacts. They're messages from the past, written in wood and bone and ash. And they're still being delivered. If this journey through time fascinated you, subscribe to our channel for more untold stories from history. Hit the notification bell so you never miss when we uncover the past. And let us know in the comments, what lost city or forgotten civilization should we explore next? Because history isn't just what we remember. It's what we dig up, dust off, and refuse to forget. Thank you for watching.